Hey! This is part 3, don't worry, it's the last part. Sorry there's so much stuff, but it's like a lot to cover. So anyway, Olivia's in Seattle and she gets a call from Sam, and he's like, did you get the business cards? And she was supposed to collect a business card from like everyone she saw wearing red. I don't know, that was kind of weird. But anyway, he was like, okay, lay them all out, and then select certain letters from each one, like circle them, and then rearrange them. And she's like, what? And then he was like, oh, well, it just like rearrange it, anagram, just rearrange it into what you want to hear. You'll get it. You'll figure it out. So then she doesn't really get it anyway, but she just goes along with it and hangs up. And then Burroughs calls her, and he says that the files of the patients have been wiped in the last 24 hours. So whoever had done it must have had a password. And Nyack's like, oh, none of my employees would do this, but they all have the password. And then he's like, wait, Zach Miller. He has skipped work today and he hasn't been answering his phone. So Peter and Olivia go to Zach's house. And then there's no answer when they knock on the door, so they walk in, they can't find anyone. And then it goes to Dr. Nyack and he's walking into his lab, but then there's this little note inside the sign thing or whatever, and then he picks it up, and then Olivia and Peter are inside the apartment, and then it's like they open this cabinet and Zach is in there like sitting with a bullet in his head, and he's dead. And then the note says, stop talking to the feds or end up like Zach. And it's really creepy. And then back at the lab, Walter is like working on the FBI agent that he had passed out with the little sniffing the thing, beaker, and Astrid, always the voice of reason's like, oh, Walter, this isn't a good idea, what's wrong with him? And then he puts the device on his head. He doesn't feel anything at first, but then he's like, ooh, ooh. And then he goes all like into a druggy trance kind of thing. Well, that's what it looked like to me. But then Nyack shows the note to Peter and Olivia, and they're like, oh, don't worry, we're going to have all the security around your house and your lab. No one's going to kill you. And then after they leave, he like makes a phone call, and he's like, I showed them your damn note, so you might as well stop. And then Walter tells Peter that the microchips are like accessing the sensory that passes through their midbrain while they sleep, and it's like stealing dreams. So then like they have the ability to turn on like a dream state while someone's awake. Really weird, I know. And then it's like an inability to distinguish like dreams and what's really going on like in reality. So he thinks that like somehow whoever's doing it is like an addict to dreams, and like they get high off stealing people's dreams. It's really strange. And so Olivia and Peter go to the hotel, and she talks about her stepfather, who you might have heard about in that one episode about the big monster hybrid thing, where I think that was the episode, right? Yeah, whatever. Anyway, and she says that like he used to beat her mom, and she almost killed her own stepfather, but then he like drove away and she had never seen him, but every year on her birthday he sends her like a birthday card and lets her know that he's still around, which is really creepy. I feel really bad for Olivia. She has all this stuff going on. But anyway, so she talks about like how her dad was an alcoholic and addict, obviously, and like he had two sides to him, like one when he was like an addict and one when he was like regular. And so she said that there may be like the handwriting may be like the same person on the list of patients, and the note about, stop talking to the feds. So she looked at them, and it was actually that they were the same person, which is Dr. Nyack, because Dr. Nyack goes to his house, and then he walks in this room, and then there's a phone, the answering machine, and then he pushes it, and then it says the same message that he left in his office, where he was like, stop, I showed them your damn note. And it was like so freaky because it's actually the same person. So Dr. Nyack is like the person who is doing all this stuff and is like two sides, and he's an addict and all this creepy stuff. And yeah, it was really freaky. And then after that he like goes into the basement, and it's the same dark room where he was in when the female cook was all like freaking out because the grilling body parts and stuff, and he like turns the intensity like really high and stuff, and then this like pilot's face shows up, and then the same pilot who the face was on the screen, he's like getting ready for takeoff. So they start flying, and then he's like, like what happened to the cook? And then he like looks around, and then his co-pilot like has no face, and then the co-pilot's like freaking out because like he's like twitching and all this stuff, and he's like, dude, what's wrong? What's wrong? But he won't answer him. And then the pilot like hits the co-pilot, and then Peter and Olivia, they go to Nyack's house. They're like looking around, they can't find him. Then they go in the basement, and Dr. Nyack's all like, oh, and he's like in a trance and stuff, and the pilot is about to run into this cruise ship, and the lady who's like behind him is like screaming, and they're about to run into it, and Peter's like trying to shut off the equipment, but it won't work. And then Olivia's like, and then she like shoots the equipment a bunch of times, and then it shuts off, and then Dr. Nyack dies. But then the pilot, like just before he's about to hit the cruise ship, he goes like straight up, and then they fly over it, and they're safe. So yeah, it was really suspenseful. I got like really freaked out there. So anyway, after that, the pilot, he's all safe and stuff, and Peter says that like Nyack was like his addiction to dreams became his nightmare, and that was the only way to end it, was to like, you know, do what he did. So it goes back to Boston, and here's the sad ending part. And Olivia goes to Charlie's grave, puts little flowers on. Then she goes back inside her car where she has the notepad, and she still hasn't figured out like what to rearrange the business card letter thingies in. And then she writes it down, and it says, "You're gonna be fine," which is the phrase that Charlie said to her on her like first rookie signing thing, and it was so sad. She starts crying. I felt like I wanted to cry. It was so sad. So yeah, And the last part is there's this like little boy sleeping, and then he wakes up, and he's like, there's this like dark figure, and he's like, Dad, what's wrong? Wah! And then he screams, and then he's like pulled away, and then Peter wakes up, and he's like, whoa, sorry, it's just a nightmare. And he's like, well, I was sleeping, and then I woke up, and you were there. And then Walter was like, do you remember anything else? And then he's like, no. And he's like, okay. And then his face is like filled with utter horror, because Peter, that was actually Peter in the nightmare, obviously, and it now on the Fringe wiki they're saying that it was actually when Peter got taken from the alternate universe, because the real Peter died when he was 7 and all and stuff, and then Walter went over to the alternate universe to get him. So this was like the recurring nightmare that Peter always had, but he can't remember. So yeah, lots of questions and freaky stuff and suspense, all that good fringiness. Yeah, so that was the episode. It was really good, and unfortunately, Fringe is going to be on hiatus until like November 12th, which sucks, and it's all because of baseball. Baseball? Seriously? Well, anyway, we just have to wait. The next episode's called Earthling, I think, about Peter, people like disintegrating and stuff. I think we find out more about Broyles, because there was a lot of Broyles stuff in the promo. She was like, why is this case so important to you, and all this stuff. Anyway, that's it. Okay, thanks so much for watching, and tune in next time. Yeah, hopefully it'll be on Friday instead of Saturday. Sorry I'm late again, by the way. And add, subscribe, all that. Thank you!